Endowment for the Arts grant that he received in 2002. His books include Boy in a Boat, Any One Man, and The Trouble with a Short Horse in Montana, and some of those are on sale out in the lobby. This year, Boy won the Sandberg Prize at the Citron Review, and in the past few months, his work has been accepted by a number of publications, including, you have to add some of these probably, the Illinois Review, Blue Monday Review, Cream City Review, the Southern Review, and more. So this Ohio native was born to Appalachian parents, and lived under turbulent home conditions. He began writing at 15 after seeing the 1969 movie Easy Rider, which focused on two roughneck bikers who lead a journey of travelers against the social norms of their time. Mr. Bentley's thematic structures are reminiscent of Allen Ginsberg and other poets of the Beat generation. His works have focused on varying elements, including Vietnam War veterans, people of lower socioeconomic standing, and the struggles of women in contemporary society, and interest stemming from his relationship with and admiration of his mother and grandmother. Roy Bentley, a poet of our age, captures the unheard voices of the people for whom the American dream was not so charitable. His poetry progresses as time does, and his interest lies in recording these voices as they change with the tides. Tonight, Mr. Bentley will share some of his poems and talk about his passion for poetry and the themes that inspire his work. I'm very happy to introduce our visiting poet for 2015, Roy Bentley.
Thank you, and a small group, I'm trying to figure out whether I should move and sit on a stool or something, although they probably won't photograph well. This is probably not a big deal. I want to thank the English department and Pam, I want to thank you, and I want to thank you, Connie, for having me. And I really appreciate the opportunity to share these with you. Some people will say, sometimes I'll come into a poetry reading and I say, look, there's only 4 or 5 people there. I take heart in the fact that the year Rita Dove won the Pulitzer Prize, I was telling my wife this, the week before she won it, she read in Ohio to 7 people. And that was in 1987, I believe, 86 or 87. I saw her, she was down in OU, and we were talking, and she said, every time you read is an opportunity to connect with someone who may or may not take your stuff forward, take the whole thing forward. So she said, I wouldn't diminish the fact that an audience is small. I like that about her. I'm going to start tonight with a couple of poems from my first book, published back in 86, 87. She beat me out of the Pulitzer Prize. We published books the same year. And I said, oh, congratulations on the Pulitzer. She said, thank you. This one is, this is called Wet Handkerchief, and this is from a book called Boy in a Boat. White handkerchief has an epigram from Othello. And did you see the handkerchief? 1. The first time I had my fortune told was by a woman who taught English at a technical school. Had a black belt in judo. Pick a card, she said, and played a tape of Peter, Paul, and Mary. I pointed to the King of Cups. Cut them, she said. How much I believed of what she said is hard to say. In a way, I believed it all. When she was finished, I gave her a ride into Nelsonville, dropped her at a Ohio station as if magic belonged there. She drove away in a Jeep. 2. On a small rise the 3rd week of spring, walking, I noticed at the edge of a leaf in wind, a moment in which the underside can be seen clearly, when rise and fall are one motion, connection, tenuous as rain. Legs are stiff with going up, I see that turning repeated. Recall the night Tom Kozlowski spoke in tongues in a basement in Newark, Ohio. Tom rocking, chanting, I heard what I took to be God. Afterwards asked how much was his. Shrugging, Tom smiled, you tell me. 3. When I was 13, Virgil Horsley stood at the front of the Heath Baptist Church, white handkerchief in his cupped hand, and in the lightest southern accent I've ever heard, told me I was lost. My grandmother who read to me from a big King James, and the blood came trickling down. Would have been proud as I went forward, tears streaming, all the way to 19, when I cut my wrist and saw bright and gray in the meat, how stupid it would be to waste this. Now, in the middle distance, I hear Virgil Horsley too is lost, shipped out on a tanker, drunk, ranting, there is no God. Suddenly the weather changes, and he is part of whatever it means to say something is past protecting. On dry land, it is easy to separate out the brick church by Ramp Creek, dull voice that pleaded its way through 1967. One more verse, while we wait. When I was teaching once upon a time, a friend of mine, Keith Rhodes, a guy who wanted to teach with a 45, he was so subtle. He said, I'd like to be able to put my 45 down and go, we covered this. I said, you're a loon, man. And fortunately, he quit teaching. But I was working on this poem called On the Diamond Behind Garfield Elementary, Melvin White Proves There's But One Boob Pal. At the time I was finishing it, it was, there is but one Pete Rose. And Keith Rhodes said, Pete Rose sucks. I'm not into baseball, so he said, try Boob Pal. He's a big guy. Now, as you hear the poem, you'll see why he wanted a big, hulking first baseman. On the diamond behind Garfield Elementary, Melvin White proves there's but one Boob Pal. When Dave Wheeler fielded the hard-won hopper to short, he fired the ball to Melvin White, forgetting the huge first baseman moved like molasses. Melvin caught it on his sternum. You could hear the breath escaping all the way to center field. Falling in love is like that. Begging air as the infield laughs hysterically. You could be dying, blue and big as Melvin White. It could be spring and the woman married. She could be dark and fine as air, the hour after rain. Still they would double over laughing, the pain getting worse. And after she had gone, you would catch her scent. Imagine strong, small hands having apricots as you fall face first, runner advancing. Of course, eventually the pain would ease, you would stand, it would be important that the game go on. You would recall a score, how far behind you were when it hit, only this bright burning in the lungs. That poem will probably follow me around. It's the first one I ever did, and I went, Jesus. May you have that experience where you go, that one works. I came out of graduate school, and about half of what I was writing seemed to me to be, I don't know, it was affected or something. But occasionally I would write a poem where I understood metaphor and how it works and how baseball worked in that. It made sense to me. This poem I want to read you is about Dizzy Gillespie. This is from my second book, Any One Man. I got to see Dizzy one time in this poem as a result of that. Dizzy Gillespie at the Blue Note. Somebody sat on his trumpet in 1953, and he's been playing with a bent bell ever since. The New Yorker. I will take you with me. I will lift you, the black balloons of his foreface seem to say, and he does. Tosses you like an infant. The whole exchange having taken time, a second child, and tossed it toward whatever heaven the bent bell sends, an impossible music. Just to flower like that, once, and go again among strangers, knowing not only what this jazz is, besides black history blonde white women sway to, but that beauty displaces us. Bent as if receiving other more universally pained sets of notes or tones, the bell of the horn burgeons, gilt bloom of some hope of anything like satisfaction, or even a momentary letting up of longing. Be thankful there is no music encompassing the one darkness makes babes of us all. Be glad there are those so filled to bursting that their jowl muscles weaken and they blow it out, changed, pure. How does this work? He owns the notes. They cry to be loosed. He holds them forever. there's a point at which, when I was writing, I thought the people around me became fodder for poems. And I always wanted to do a decent job by them. Not tell the awful all the time. My parents hated that I would. But here's one that I hope tells the good a little bit. This is called The Heron Tattooed. And I read this for Gloria. When I think of summer in Seattle, I think of the tattoo parlor on Evergreen Way in Everest, Washington, where Gloria Regalbuto paid $80 to have a great blue heron tattooed above her right breast in 4 colors, in answer to the tiger above my left breast. I had never watched anyone being tattooed. You can't really watch when they do it to you. And I saw blood rise up from her, oxygenated, bright, sulfur-colored, the never-completed blood of her history and her apprenticeship to it. She bled her mother's cruelty, the lesser bumps of girlhood in Cleveland's Little Italy. She bled her artist father's successes, his failures, the art of being able to talk Cleveland Browns football from a hospital bed. She bled the surface of her face changing from stunningly beautiful to just beautiful, to the uncertain nights lessening its best features. She bled early menses, Catholic school, the lie that pain is your ticket to heaven. Then it slowed. The work was done. The rainbow outline of body restricted to shades of blue and deep forest green. The white top beard of the bird's head, the legs so identifiable as bird as to be nearly a caricature. When I think of love, being loved, that's what I see. That bruise of a bird standing on a lakeshore of flesh and seeing itself and the world in eyes that happen to be looking down, trying to disappear into another whose blood's mirror is theirs and shining with what is and isn't about to fly. Talk among yourselves, man. How are you? I had a father, many of you may have had one. I didn't get along with him very well. I liked him. I don't think he liked me much. When I was a little bitty boy, he was doing some things that my mother didn't like. And they divorced. He was supposed to come pick me up one day, and he called me all day, or I called him all day at his service station. And he kept saying, "I'll be right there." And he never came. So I was hacked off at him. And he came up the hill finally and said, "You ready to go?" And I said, I called him by his name and told him no, I wasn't going anywhere with him. And he was upset, told my mother, "Make him go." And I said, "I'm not going." And I was 9 years old. It was funny to me, after all those years, he used to come back to me and say, "I'm really sorry about that." But he didn't say it in words so much. He said it in ways like, "Well, you probably made some mistakes yourself." You know what I mean? And so I wrote a poem for him that years and years ago I read to him, and he goes, "What in the hell?" I'll read it to you and see if you do better with it. It's called "The Country of the Dead," and it's about him. We sit in the paneled basement of his house in Ohio and listen to a doctor in Sao Paulo sputter in perfect English about ionic skip. Waves of voice at the speed of light bounced with little loss, day to night to day. The room is radios and coaxial cable at arm's length. A dark zenith transoceanic he listened to the year I was born collects dust forlornly on a parts shelf. Honolulu, he says, is nothing. Bi-weekly talks weather, rain or dry with Melbourne, Australia. When I was a boy, 17 Led Zeppelin albums spun between these walls. Other atmospheres of marijuana smoke circled up and out through opened window wells. Everything familiar was made over years ago, remodeled and sealed to soundproof. Antenna tower outside above, where I scratched names, a heart, love forever. Superseded, sold for scrap. The handful of women who undressed and let go mysteries below my parents' bed would never admit to so much of us so scrupulously lost. One memory like another, like something else or nothing very much must have happened here. I want to ask the doctor in Brazil what my father would think foolish, whether random connecting like this, continent to continent, ever goes beyond words and megahertz. Talking air, my mother calls it. I think of silence as message, whistling engine, the bounty and emptiness, measured looping adventure of electricity bound in that lightning becomes voice instant of science and sense, all of it burning. If there were call letters, a frequency for the condition of hearts, signal would diminish in transit. An answer begin, say again? The doctor speaks of the necessary death of rainforests to the north, of exports and topless beaches. Says the trick is to look and not look. Okay, now I'll take you into a time in my life. I was in during Vietnam. I wasn't in Vietnam. I was in the Air Force, and I was a bit of a peckerhead. You know, I gave them some grief, and they didn't like it, so they basically, put up with me as long as they could, and I put up with them as long as I could, 2 years. And then I got out. Got an honorable discharge. My college was paid for, and God bless the United States of America for that. But the Air Force and me, well, here comes the story. I'm going to read you about 4 poems about that, and this will be the guts of what I share with you. First poem is called The Whore is Born in Texas. It starts with the butts we're field stripping in a rolling motion between thumb and index finger. Tobacco and filter floss scattered in no special direction onto flat squadron lawns. Someone's told us to police up the area. The first black guy I've spoken to in my life wants to talk, says he's from Detroit. The next step is mine. I've taken LSD at least 20 times, but I can't get laid. There's no premeditation to it, no scheming. It's everything true I know to say. He says, you're a damn holy man. He's got a big gap-toothed smile, looks like a short Malcolm X in Air Force fatigues. I've read about Malcolm in Life magazine. It starts to rain, big drops. And he tells me if we ever get leave, he'll show me a place in town. All the tricks. We're getting soaked, more so by the minute. He says his name's Leonard, but that I should call him Butch. Says he'll call me whore, in the same way they call big men tiny. I like him. You smoke, I ask? There's that no apologies smile you can buy whatever you need with. I don't think, gee, we're going to be friends. I think this broad, flat nose a perfect bird's wing. His expression that of a kid playing hooky. Not cigarettes, he says, letting go leaf into that other life of West Texas wind.